The wild story of the Yamaha DX7. How a digital rebel changed music forever. Picture this. It's 1983, and the music world is dominated by massive, analog synthesizers that cost more than a small house and require a PhD in electrical engineering just to turn on. Musicians are walking around with instruction manuals thicker than phone books, trying to figure out why their Moog sounds like a dying whale instead of a piano. Enter the Yamaha DX7, a sleek, digital bad boy that was about to flip the entire music industry on its head. The birth of a legend. The story begins in the late 1960s at Stanford University, where a brilliant composer and researcher named John Chowning was tinkering with something called FM synthesis, frequency modulation synthesis, to be exact. It was academically fascinating but seemed too complicated for commercial use. Then Yamaha came knocking. Second, they were temperamental divas. Temperature changes could throw them out of tune, and getting the same sound twice was often more luck than skill. Third, they were absolutely terrible at recreating acoustic instruments. Want a realistic piano sound? The Digital Dragon. This thing looked like it came from the future, sleek, black, with a digital display that made other synths look like they belonged in a museum. But the real magic was happening inside. Good luck with that. You'd get something that sounded more like a piano falling down a flight of stairs. In 1975, they licensed Chowning's FM synthesis technology, and what followed was nearly a decade of research and development that would change everything. This machine could produce sounds that were so realistic, so crisp, so impossibly clean that musicians couldn't believe what they were hearing. That bright, bell-like electric piano tone showed up on countless hit records and became the signature sound of the 1980s. It was like Yamaha had bottled lightning and put it in a keyboard. Analog synths ruled the roost, massive beasts like the Minimoog, the Prophet 5, and the Jupiter 8. These machines were undeniably cool, but they had some serious issues. The DX7 became the centerpiece of countless home studios, and the democratization of music production began in earnest. You didn't need a record label or $1 million studio anymore. You just needed a DX7, a sequencer, and some creativity. While everyone else was obsessing over analog circuits and voltage-controlled oscillators, Chowning was exploring this weird new world where one sound wave could modulate another, creating incredibly complex and realistic tones. It showed up everywhere, from Whitney Houston's I When Not Dance with Somebody to Phil Collins' In the Air Tonight, from a-ha's Take On Me to countless other hits. That distinctive DX7 sound became synonymous with the 1980s. This meant that for the first time, musicians could chain multiple instruments together, control them from a single keyboard. Record labels loved it because it was cheap and could replace expensive session musicians. It didn't matter, those sounds were so good that they dominated radio for nearly a decade. Everyone won, except maybe the analog purists who watched their beloved vintage synths get relegated to dusty corners of music stores and create complex, layered arrangements that would have been impossible before. Musicians began craving the warmth and character of analog synthesis again, leading to the analog revival of the mid-90s. It showed that accessibility and affordability didn't have to mean compromising on quality. But the DX7's influence never really went away. For years, FM synthesis was like that cool underground band nobody knew about. Yamaha even released modern recreations like the Refus DX and various software emulations. While it came with 32 incredible preset sounds, programming your own sounds was like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded while riding a unicycle. It proved that sometimes the best way to honor musical tradition is to completely reinvent it. The interface was minimal, just a few buttons and a tiny LCD screen, and the FM synthesis parameters were so complex that most musicians just stuck with the presets. It changed how we think about sound, how we make music, and how we define what's possible in the studio. Not bad for a machine that cost less than $2,000 and came with an instruction manual that might as well have been written in ancient hieroglyphics. They sold over 200,000 DX7s, an astronomical number for a professional synthesizer. The analog apocalypse. Suddenly, everyone wanted digital synthesis. Analog synths became unfashionable almost overnight, and manufacturers scrambled to release their own digital instruments. To understand why the DX7 was such a game-changer, you need to picture the synthesizer landscape of the early 1980s. First, they were expensive as hell. A decent analog polysynth could easily cost $4,000 to $8,000, which in today's money is like buying a luxury car. Musicians were crying out for something different, something that could give them realistic acoustic sounds without breaking the bank or requiring a degree in electronic engineering. Enter when Yamaha finally unleashed the DX7 in 1983. It was like dropping a nuclear bomb in the music store. The DX7 used 6 operators, basically sophisticated digital oscillators that could modulate each other in 32 different algorithms. Sounds complicated, it was, but the results were absolutely mind-blowing. The famous Piano 1 preset became the most recognizable synthesizer sound in history, the price revolution. But here's where Yamaha pulled their masterstroke. They priced the DX7 at just $1,995. In a world where decent polysynths cost twice that much, the DX7 was an absolute steal. Musicians who had been dreaming of owning a professional synthesizer suddenly found themselves able to afford one. It was like Yamaha had declared war on the competition and decided to win by making everyone else's products obsolete overnight. The timing was perfect. The music industry was exploding with new genres. MTV was creating stars overnight, and everyone wanted that modern, digital sound. The DX7 wasn't just a synthesizer, it was a cultural phenomenon. MIDI, the universal language. The DX7 also happened to be one of the first synthesizers to fully embrace MIDI musical instrument digital interface, which have been standardized that same year. Suddenly, a single musician could sound like an entire band. The sound of a generation. The DX7's impact on popular music cannot be overstated. Musicians loved it because it was reliable, versatile, and consistent. Sound engineers loved it because it sat perfectly in the mix without needing much EQ. The programming nightmare, of course, the DX7 wasn't perfect. This led to a strange phenomenon. Millions of DX7s were sold, but probably 90% of users never ventured beyond those original 32 sounds. The Empire Strikes Back. The DX7's success was so massive that it literally changed the synthesizer industry forever. Yamaha milked the DX7 formula for all it was worth, releasing the DX7ii, DX7s, and numerous other DX series instruments. The backlash and beyond. By the early 1990s, the DX7 sound had become so ubiquitous that it started to feel dated. Modern music production still relies heavily on digital synthesis, and the DX7 proved that digital could be just as musical and inspiring as analog. The legacy lives on. Today, the DX7 is considered a classic, and vintage units are highly sought after. Its sounds have been sampled, emulated, and recreated countless times. The DX7 didn't just sell instruments, it sold a vision of the future where technology could make music making more accessible, more affordable, and more creative. In the end, the Yamaha DX7 wasn't just a synthesizer, it was a revolution disguised as a keyboard. The DX7, because sometimes the future arrives exactly when you need it most. If you like the video, don't forget to like and share. Also, subscribe to the channel and welcome.